In this video, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about mushrooms in Ark. Mushrooms have many uses, including taming and giving yourself some buffs, but they can also cause you a lot of problems in the game. The mushrooms themselves and the spores can cause you to be poisoned or hallucinate. I'm going to teach you what to look out for and give you some tips on how to survive the mushroom spores. In the green zone or fertile areas, you'll see groups of brown mushrooms all clumped together. Similar to berry bushes, you can pick them by hand and you'll get fiber and lots of different kinds of mushrooms. If you harvest them with a sickle, you'll only get fiber. And in fact, just like berries, you can use a creature to gather mushrooms. Some of the creatures that are good berry gatherers also make great mushroom gatherers. So on Aberration, you want to consider maybe trying an Aberrant trike, Aberrant stego, or Aberrant iguanodon to harvest them. Other options include an aberrant bear, a roll rat, or a parasaur. You will also find trees that are covered in mushrooms and also giant mushrooms that look like trees. If you harvest these, you'll get lots of wood but also rare mushroom. And you can get more rare mushroom if you use a pickaxe. You will also see another group of mushrooms in the green or fertile zone, and these are red mushrooms that look like toadstools, and these mushrooms can be pretty dangerous. You do need to pay particular attention to these mushrooms. The regular ones with the white stems and the rounded red caps are actually safe. You can touch them, and in fact, you can harvest them to get more mushrooms. But lurking in the group, there is always one deadly mushroom. It is slightly shorter than the other mushrooms and has a really fat stem. And if you notice, the cap is a little bit more peaked than domed compared to the others. If you touch it, it will release toxic spores, which will cause you to hallucinate. Your character is going to see waves and waves of colorful rainbow lines. In fact, it will be really hard to see anything, and you'll actually start to constantly poop over and over and over again. You will also run out of oxygen and start to immediately suffocate, which can last around 11 to 12 seconds. And this will cause your health to rapidly decline. If you're already injured or accidentally touch that mushroom again and get a repeated exposure, you're pretty much guaranteed to be dead. So if you see these early game, try and stay away from them. I'm going to give you some tips later in the video on how you can survive contact with these mushrooms. The toxic effect of these mushrooms exists in spore form too on the map. The main area that I have seen them in is the surface entrance cave located near the fertile lake. Back in ASE, the spores used to be yellow in color and easy to see, but I'm finding with my settings on ASA that I am having incredible difficulty seeing the spores. You'll have the same effect where you continuously poop, health goes down, and you start to suffocate. You won't always notice the spores if you're wearing a hazard suit, but you'll see them affecting your light pet. You'll see that they take damage as well. The one really good thing about these red mushrooms is that they actually give you biotoxin. When you harvest them either by hand or even better with a creature, they will give you biotoxin, so no need to go into the water for that. In order not to be affected by the poisonous spores, you need to make sure that you're wearing a hazard suit or have snacked on some Aggeravic mushrooms. Some of the best creatures to harvest these to get the most biotoxin are the aberrant bear and also the parasaur. Biotoxin is an excellent narcotic and you can use it to make shocking trank darts, so finding it on land early game is a real bonus. In the bioluminescent or blue zone, you'll see groups of grey-blue mushrooms that kind of appear like they're growing sideways or almost in a vertical manner. They kind of look like a clamshell. You can harvest them by hand or again with a creature. You will also see cyan balls on stalks. These are harvestable mushrooms as well. You will also find freezing or bioluminescent mushrooms clustered on the ground. These are circular and lay flat on the ground and are green in colored. Again, most of them are harmless, but if you look at one in the group, there is a slightly different looking one. This one looks like the others, but it has a magenta or purple colored bottom. Watch out for this one. That one will release freezing toxin, which gives you extreme hypothermia. You will get really narrow, blurred tunnel vision, making it really difficult to see. And it doesn't matter how much your player fortitude is, you will start to freeze. And these actually don't affect your health too much, but what you need to look out for is the torpor effect. Coming into contact with these mushrooms will rapidly increase your torpor and you'll often pass out in the mushroom cloud and then continue to reinfect yourself. And passing out in the blue zone is generally a very bad idea because there is a lot of predators in that area. And yes, these exist in spore form as well. On ASA they were easy to see. They were white and cyan colored spores in the air. On ASA, I'm finding them really tricky to see. What will happen is just the same as the mushroom. You will see the colored lights, freeze, and gain torpor. There is another kind of deadly mushroom found on this map, and you can find it in the red or element zones. These are element branch mushrooms, and just like the other varieties, the one with the different stem, in this case it's the pale green stalk looking mushroom, will cause poison spores to form. You won't ever really come across these mushrooms. You can't enter the radiation zone without a hazard suit, so you'll barely get affected by them. The one exception to this is if you're using a lamprey and don't have a hazard suit. In that case, you may be affected by the mushrooms, and what happens is these cause constant defecation and rapid hunger for around 2 minutes, to the point where you will starve and actually die. The effects of the element branch mushrooms also exist in spore form. On ASE, they used to be pink in color, but again on ASA they're very hard to see. Because you'll be wearing a hazard suit, you won't really notice the effects of the spores, but you will see it affecting your creatures like your rock drakes and your light pets. You'll see them taking damage when you are in the spore areas. When you harvest mushrooms, you'll notice that you get lots of different kinds, and the first one I want to talk about are the aquatic mushrooms. Aquatic mushrooms are one of the preferred taming foods for the light pet bulb dogs. When you eat one, it regenerates a percentage of your water, so if you're thirsty, they're great to have on hand. The one limitation of that is it does drain your food. They're also really good to put in custom recipes for drinks. The great benefit of using them in a custom recipe is they do give you the buff for water. However, in a custom recipe, you don't have the food drain buff, so having a few aquatic mushrooms as well as some berries will be a great drink to have that you can make custom in a cooking pot. And let me show you the effects of drinking the custom drink right here. You can see our water is going up rapidly and our food drain is not going down. The best thing about these though is they do give you immunity to the freezing spores. So remember the freezing spores in the bioluminescent zone. If you eat aquatic mushrooms, it will make you immune to the effects. The effects of this stack, so for each mushroom that you eat, you will get more and more protection. If you have the freezing spore effect, the aquatic mushrooms will get rid of the effect, but also what you can do is eat them before you go into the spore zone to offer yourself protection. A full hazard suit will also protect you, but early game you may not have that yet, so that's why these mushrooms are so awesome. You can see here that we have eaten the aquatic mushrooms before touching the mushroom patch, and we are not being affected by the freezing spores. This also applies to the spore zone, so if you're traveling through a spore zone, you're worried about freezing, you can pre-eat the mushrooms to avoid getting the freezing spore effect. Here we're running through a spore zone, and you can see that by pre-eating the mushrooms, we are not affected by the freezing spores at all. If you're traveling and you accidentally come across the freezing spore effect, make sure you spam those mushrooms because it will reduce the amount of time that you are under freezing spores. You can see here that we spammed the mushrooms and the freezing spore effect went away really quickly. The next amazing mushroom I want to talk about is the Aggeravic mushrooms. Now you can use these to tame shinehorns. They're one of their preferred taming foods. When you eat these mushrooms, you get a healing effect. In fact, it regenerates your health by a very small percentage, but this stacks. So if you have a big stack of these in your inventory and spam them, your health will go up a lot. Great if you don't have med brews on hand. This does come at the cost of food drain though. The healing properties make them especially awesome for, again, custom foods. I like to throw them in with some raw meat, as well as a bunch of Aggeravic mushrooms, and then build a custom food recipe. When you eat the custom food, you'll get the healing buff, but you won't get the cost of food drain, and in fact you actually gain some food. So they're really awesome in custom recipes. One of the best things about these mushrooms though is they offer you protection for the hallucinogenic spawns. So if you want to harvest the red mushrooms for biotoxin, or you're just in an area that they are in, if you spam these Aggeravic mushrooms, it will provide protection before going up to those red mushrooms. Or if you have accidentally wandered into those spores or mushrooms and are tripping out, if you eat the Aggeravic mushrooms, it will undo the effect. A full hazard suit will also offer you the same protection from the spores, but given that these red mushrooms occur in the starting areas of the game, having Aggeravic mushrooms on hand is really helpful. You can pre-spam these mushrooms to avoid getting the effects of the fertile spores in the surface entrance cave as well. You can see here that our bulb dog is taking damage, but we are protected because of the effects of the mushroom. Acerbic mushrooms are one of the most potent narcotics in the game. The acerbic mushrooms are the preferred taming food for the light pet glowtails. They are very similar to narcoberries, and in fact, they are actually even more potent at torpor than a narcoberry. Acerbic mushrooms are even more potent than narcotic. You can use them in place of narcoberries. It will take you 5 acerbic mushrooms to make 1 narcotic. It's the same ratio as if you're using narcoberries. However, I consider it a waste to use the acerbic mushrooms to make narcotic. You're better off using narcoberries, and here's the reason why. If you look at my player here, eating 1 narcotic gains 40 torpor, and eating 1 acerbic mushroom gains 25 torpor. So if you eat 5 mushrooms, that's a total of 125 torpor. So it's actually not worth exchanging the mushrooms for your narcotic recipe. What I do is continue to use narcoberries and then use the acerbic mushrooms to keep tames asleep while taming. And these mushrooms actually give you immunity and protection of the effects of the element biome poisons. However, this is kind of useless. You're almost always in the radiation zone in a hazard suit, and of course if you eat these mushrooms to give you immunity, you're just gonna take a nap in the radiation zone. The next mushroom I want to mention is the Auric mushrooms. Now these are the mushrooms that you will need if you want to tame a featherlight. They are quite similar to stimberries in that if you eat one, it will regenerate your stamina and it will reduce your torpor, but at the cost of water. These don't offer any protection from poisonous mushrooms. However, what Auric mushrooms do is they can actually reduce the effects of radiation sickness. Now you get radiation sickness if you enter the radiation zone without protection of a hazard suit or a lamprey, or the most common reason I get it is when a piece of my hazard gear breaks. Eating an Auric mushroom will reduce the amount of time that you have radiation sickness for, so this buys you some time to either get out of the radiation zone, or you could have time to switch out your gear before dying in the rad zone. Unlike the other mushrooms, eating the Auric mushrooms before you go into the radiation zone won't prevent radiation sickness. While you're in the radiation zone, you can spam them rapidly to reduce the amount of seconds that you'll be exposed to the radiation. But as you'll see here, it doesn't prevent the radiation sickness. We're still getting the effect, and our health is going down rapidly. And even though we're spamming as many mushrooms as we can, we do end up dying. In order to prevent radiation sickness for a player, you need to be either connected to a lamprey or have a hazard suit on. But radiation sickness also affects the tames that you're riding, and that's where Mushroom Brew can come in really handy. Mushroom Brew is a recipe that's made in your cooking pot or industrial cooker, and it contains Aggeravic mushrooms, aquatic mushrooms, acerbic mushrooms, Auric mushrooms, sap, and congealed gas balls. There are many creatures on Aberration that are immune to radiation damage, but there are several that are not. Things such as ravagers, roll rats, aberrant bears, basilisks, and ankies. So if you want to offer them some protection, if you need to take them into the radiation zone, you can feed them Mushroom Brew, and it provides your team with 120 seconds of immunity to radiation. After 2 minutes, it will wear off, and then you'll need to feed it another one, but it will stop your dino from getting really sick and its HP going down. My name is Krabby, and this has been a load of information, but by now you should know every single thing that you need to know about mushrooms for the map Aberration. If you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel because I have lots more just like it, and including this one right here. Thanks for watching. Bye.